Hello world, welcome back to the Pocket Gamer podcast with your hosts, me, Brian Baglow, and the paragon of presenters, the archdeacon of A/B testing, Miss Peggy and Salz. Hello Peggy, it's great to see you. It's been far too long.
It is great to see you too. I mean, we have had a wonderful pipeline because we have had tons of interviews from Pocket Gamer London. So yes, we've taken a little bit of a break from sort of our get-together show. So it's great to connect and be energized. Here we are, yeah, it's great to see you too. And winding up and getting ready for all the shows ahead. Indeed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like we're moving into the beautiful daylight hours of 2025.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
sunshine in Scotland. It's a balmy 4 degrees centigrade, so you still need a hat to go out, but it's good to be back. It's really good to be back. And what a show we have lined up.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the A/B testing. I mean, testing is it, right? We know it because everyone on the show says now it starts with a great game. It does start with a great game. There was a time when you could sort of like start with a great campaign and a mediocre game, but those days are gone. Those days are gone, and that's why we're deep diving into game testing. But what is it? What does it mean to test a game? And more importantly, a first ever report that I found that is just amazing, because it's one thing to say this is the way you test a game, but it's another to say this is what top performing studios do. This is how they do testing, and that's what separates them from the rest, right? The leaders and the also-rans. So we have two industry insiders who are going to tell us about this report and testing best practice. We have Jack Dunne, VP of Research and Operations at PlaytestCloud. Great to have you, Jack.
Very nice to meet everybody. Excited to get going today.
Absolutely. And I'm excited because we have John Wright back, former VP of Mobile at Kwalee, and currently, I would just say, mobile influencer and overall great guy, John.
I mean, yeah, let's just stick great guy, part-time bum. That's what I'm going with right now, okay?
Yeah. We'll get the business cards printed soon.
It's part-time consultant, part-time, full-time dad. That's what I'm going for these days. So
that's a lovely mix, John. We've had
that's never a bad thing.
Absolutely.
Welcome, Jack, and welcome back, John. It's great to have you both here, John. Good to see you again. Before we dive deep into the testing side of things, but you're both kind of serious athletes. You're making me think that my career of sitting on my butt talking to people on a laptop may not be right for me. So, Jack, I believe you run ultra marathons and are going for this can't be right, 300-mile trek through the desert post GDC.
Yeah, so that's
and John, we know you're into your strength training.
Yeah.
So, Jack, what?
Yeah, so that's how I'm going to decompress after GDC, and going to go run through the desert with some friends for a week.
That's decompressing.
Okay. What is the temperature going to be?
So it'll range between probably 35 degrees Celsius during the day and get down to like almost freezing at night. It snowed last year on the same run. I didn't do it last year, but yeah, it snowed last year in the desert. So we'll be running through the Mojave. Very, very excited about it.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that you're here. We'll have to ask you back on the podcast post run.
If he survives, let's pray for Jack right now.
I was not going to go there, John, but yes, and John, strength training. We know that you're well into this. So, does that have any sort of impact on the rest of your career as a part-time consultant, full-time dad, part-time bum?
No, the only thing I'd say is I've had more time recently to train, which is always a nice thing, rather than spending 60, 70 hours in front of a screen every week. The flexibility of spending more time with my children and obviously choosing when I can work out a bit more and stuff like that. So I've been enjoying it. And just enjoying the new dynamics of being, part-timer rather than full-time exec.
Well, it's delightful to have you both here. So I'm looking forward to this one.
Strong mind, strong body, strong ideas. We want to get to playtesting, right?
Yeah. Remember, Marcus Aurelius said that the body is houses the soul. So strong body equals strong mind. So It all goes back to that.
And I have to go to a little bit of a pun because I thought, yes, let's take the heavy lifting out of testing. Oh, that's bad. I know it is bad. But we will dig into the latest report that you have over at PlaytestCloud. Love the title, by the way. This is grit, I'll tell you. Steal this strategy, right? So breaking down exactly that strategy. What are the key habits that successful game studios do and what makes them stand out? So I'll start with you, Jack, about what stands out for you in this report.
Yeah, so the things that stand out to me in Steal This Strategy is that we really validated a lot of the core assumptions that we've had about playtesting and Playtest Cloud over the last couple of years. The biggest ones are in and around that kind of multiple different types of testing. And then there's been something that we've known studios have tested for and publishers have tested for over the years, which is trying to find out if people are playing their game longer than the ordered session is. And we were finally able to put some big data behind that and see that that core assumption was true. I think the other thing that stood out to me in the report is going through 10 years of playtesting data on any platform is going to be very challenging. And it was a lot of work for a lot of people. And it's absolutely fantastic that we've finally gotten to this stage. And we're really excited to talk about it today.
A lot of work indeed. I mean, let's just park that for a moment and deep dive into that alone, because the methodology here, I mean, 10 years of data, obviously a ton of work. Share a little bit of that methodology that helps you basically confirm some of the most important points we need to make that aren't just common sense anymore. Now we can say that. Now we have a foundation we can build from.
Yeah. So on the methodology side, like we constantly talk about how many studies that we run through the platform. So last year it was 5,400. The year before, I think it was 4,200, something like that. And we've had this kind of desire to look into these numbers more. And finally, with a bit more bandwidth within our own research team, as well as a lot of support from marketing, we decided to really go deep into this and try to understand how a section of our clients are using the platform. That section was the kind of the highly successful studios, the ones who are doing really well in the market. They're part of big acquisitions. They're performing really well just across games and across genres as well. I think another big part of it is at PlaytestCloud, we test everything from very casual games right up to the most in-depth 4X experiences, and now on PC as well. And just kind of breaking all of that down over the course of a couple of weeks was really invigorating, and to see that what we've been telling clients through our own kind of gut feeling or maybe vibes based stuff was all kind of coming out of this report and coming to light. It was a really fantastic experience to go through.
And now we know. I mean, we sort of thought it, but now we know that testing is better than doing nothing. And the best studios, well, they test at multiple stages of the game development. It's not just at the end to see, oh, do we have a commercial success? So, I mean, that was very, very intriguing.
Yeah. And that's something that we've seen happen kind of to your point at the start of this, like you used to be able to start off with a mediocre game, throw a bunch of UA money on it and hope at the other end when CPIs are much lower. I know we're talking specifically about mobile here. And that's just not true anymore. You need to have a game experience through both a fun aspect or like a gameplay aspect and also a usability aspect now. Like if someone downloads a game and can't understand what's happening within the first 15 to 30 seconds, they're just going to delete it and go and move on to the next thing. So we're starting to see a lot more studios, whether they be the very successful studios or not, start to tap into that multiple different testing types. And I think that's going to be something that we only see more of in the future as we constantly see these bigger studios and publishers wanting to innovate and come up with new different testing methodologies to understand what their players and what their competitors' players are doing.
Well, think about it, Brian. We're going to have as many ways and approaches to testing perhaps as we have genres and subgenres of games. I mean, it's going to be, you nearly probably customize your testing to your game. Who knows?
I think it makes a huge amount of sense, and everything that I'm hearing here, Peggy, is just really feeding into so many of the people we have on the show, which is there's no one-size-fits-all approach anymore. Every game has to be treated, as something unique, and it's that the processes that allow you to gauge every level of design, pre-production, production, development, all the way through, and figure out what's working, what you need to focus on, what you're missing, because we have the most discriminating and discerning audience in the world out there, and the cost for them moving on is practically nothing. So if you want to get your players engaged, keep them engaged, and keep them coming back and build some kind of loyalty, you need to know at every stage that you're not leaving them unsure, uncertain. So I'm absolutely loving this. And Jack, I'm in. I want to find out more.
Awesome.
Well, I'm interested in that because John, that's something that you have also seen from your own experience. I mean, how does this resonate with how you did testing or how you saw testing? Because it's about, making those decisions early, always killing your darlings. What have you seen?
Yeah, look, the industry's definitely gone down a qualitative rather than quantitative approach. I think I've been well documented saying this over the last 2 years, that there's been this sort of like tectonic shift in the mindset of a developer, especially around what they build, why they build it, and the structure of building it. So, as Jack said earlier on, things like a mediocre game with a high marketability and low CPI, a year or a couple of years ago would be successful. That's not the case anymore, right? Like, users are looking for much bigger, robust experiences. Things like metagame are now like the standard, right? Like you can't launch a successful game without having like some form of in-depth meta that will break up the experience so the user's not just getting hooked into the core loop, but B, also has additional content and different engagement points to drive someone back and time again. And if you look at Monopoly Go or Royal Match, they have like racing games in their experiences now, right? Because they're trying to tap into something that's completely different to the core loop. And there's a lot of these different approaches, but ultimately, what this means is that the prototype cycle of games has gone from, like, let's say for hyper casual, it used to be like 2 weeks. Right now, as it's evolved into hybrid casual, we're now seeing 3 months, which is the standard to get to an MVP, right? And that's obviously 6x the time, 6x the production costs, 6x. Equally, things like economy and everything else is much more complex. So you need more people. It's not just small teams anymore. You've had to grow your team, and your team is working even harder than it's ever done. And look, because of that, and the additional production times, the cost of the projects go up, which means that you have less shots on goal per year. So it's extremely vital that you test at multiple stages through the production, because otherwise you could find yourself 6 months in and potentially $1 million spent on something that you could have found out after 2 months was not worth it, or you would have found some critical information that would have pivoted the development. What you don't want to do is wait for 6 months and then realise, the playtest told you a load of information that you could have known after 2 months, because then that's 4 months of money spent. That's like $750,000 in this example. So, yeah, it's just so vital these days to be able to test at every stage throughout it. And there's also the other component, which is developers are blinded by their own games, right? Like, you know how many times I've sat down with some of my teams and gone like, this is fantastic, because we are like the upper echelon of people who know how the game should work, right? Mm-hmm. We are the people that know how games work. We're gaming professionals. Right. And things like balancing, right? You just, because you built the game, you think, this ain't that hard. And then you do a play test and the people are like 9 out of 10 people saying, oh my God, this is so difficult. What is going on here? Like, and you're like, oh man, I had no idea, right? So these are all the important things that, ensuring, a variety of playtests through each stage of the production will not only help you directionally get the product into the best place, but it will also effectively save you lots of money. And because it's never been harder to launch a new game, you want to save money where you can, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, so it's a big topic.
And the report bears that out. I mean, it says this is what successful studios do differently. So I did want to just walk through a couple of those habits, those incredibly effective habits of successful studios to take us back. And one thing they do, and we've been talking about it all the time so far, frequent playtesting iteration. They iterate faster, they see better results, They don't treat playtesting as a one and done process. Now, we've been talking about it and John has been doing it. But Jack, what is the evidence for this and the lesson, the takeaway for our audience?
Yeah, so I think that it's not just that they're iterating faster, it's that they're iterating at all. These successful studios are constantly trying to figure out every single part of their game. They might be testing the first time user experience 4 or 5 times over the course of 6 or 7 months, and just trying to understand any little friction point that they can find within there that makes the game harder for the player to use. And then once they get into that point where they've got a lot of content, they'll start to test longer parts of gameplay. So they'll start testing up to 2 hours, maybe up to a week worth of content as well. And they're not watching all of that video. They're going in there and they're seeking out specific parts of the gameplay to try to figure out, is this working? Is it sticking? And is my product going to do well in the market? We see an awful lot of times, we see people do, when they go into either soft launch or open beta or worldwide launch, they'll also run a longitudinal study with us over the course of a couple of days to see qualitative insights into their quantitative data. So they're getting all of these metrics pouring into the data analytics team that's saying that, hey, at the third day, 15 minutes in, 20% of people are just not playing anymore. And if you rely on those, you have no idea really why that's happening. You just know that it is happening. When you add in the qualitative insights from a platform like PlaytestCloud, you're able to see exactly what happens at that point, and you can intercept people and ask them about it as well. It's a core part of what makes a lot of these big launches successful, or it helps people understand why their big launch wasn't successful. I think that's been a huge thing that we've seen over the last 2 years in particular. We've been part of some really big launches of games that have been in development for a long time, and they know what didn't work later on in the process.
Because you can ask about that one feature that you introduced that you thought was so amazing,
Precisely.
but actually it's the one that's making them leave.
Yeah.
Right?
Or you've done it and no one's actually engaging with it, and you think it's some sort of like hero product or hero feature, and actually it's got like really low engagement because of something you never thought about, right?
Yeah, that's hidden four little red exclamation marks deep in a menu somewhere. That tends to be the main one.
So this is making a huge amount of sense, and I think this is something that far too many developers out there tend to fall into the trap. They test their own work, as you were saying, John. You know, I made it, I played it, it's really easy. But also you have that ugly baby syndrome where no programmer wants to imagine that their work is anything less than perfect. So we know that you've got some really kind of good first-hand experience on how strategic testing has saved time and money. So can you give us a few examples or maybe just unpick that for us a little bit?
Yeah, so I think, again, if we go back a couple of years ago, it was, especially if you're focusing on like hyper casual rather than like mid-core, for example, right? There was people always did play tests, but they kind of did the play test at the point of like, we're going to launch this or not, right? Like they developed the core loop and there was a mindset of, okay, we're going to do a play test now as okay, this is the final kind of step and maybe we'll get a little bit of information, but the play test isn't going to influence us launching the game, right? Because we've already got some markability metrics and we're just going to get the game to market as quick as possible. And unless the playtest comes back with some sort of like critical bug that's, you know, we've never noticed before, like then it would have been impactful. But now, you know, if we look at games outside of hyper, even in hybrid, which obviously is the evolution of hyper, and we look at casual and mid-core, you know, playtesting throughout the production cycles is just so important, right? So we have milestones, you know, from MVP up until hard launch, right? And each stage of that, like, so if we go from MVP, then retention test, then monetization test, then soft launch, hard launch, you know, each of the sprint cycles can be anywhere between 2 and 4 weeks. So those sprint cycles, and in a milestone, you could have multiple sprint cycles, right? There could be 2 to 3 months between milestone. So if you're doing sprint cycles of 2 to 4 weeks where you're adding additional content, effectively you're adding new things to the game that can either improve results or worsen them. And you as a developer, more often than not, because you've got an amazing product team, you've got economists, they're sitting down, they're jamming, you know, it's digital jazz, and then they talk themselves into this is going to be the best thing ever. And in actual fact, it's not. But they continue to preach internally that it is, because there is a bias or a biased nature to what you do in developing your own games, and the ugly baby syndrome, like you said, Brian. So, it's really, really important that product managers and game designers in particular look at companies like PlaytestCloud as really like a massive tool in their tool set to be able to get unbiased information and to potentially pivot the direction of what they're developing, features or product wise. So it's just so important that, again, throughout those different milestones, through those different sprint cycles, like, again, if I'm doing a 4-week sprint cycle, that's normally for a casual game, it's 4 weeks, for a hybrid game, it's 2 weeks, but I would probably do a playtest every sprint cycle, right? Because there's new stuff being added that you could get value from an outside person looking at it. And equally, if you think from the way that development works, you might add something in one sprint, but then there's other sprints afterwards that will focus on more development of that particular feature. So if you don't do a playtest at that initial point, you could then double down on it and overdevelop it when actually it has no impact. Mm-hmm. And the fact is, regular playtesting highlights all of these things. And way developers should look at it very simply is, this will give you, directional information that will influence the production, which in turn will save you money from going down the wrong path. Right?
How much money, John? Have you? Can you share? Now that you're no longer at Kwalee, you can maybe tell us. I
can tell you that.
Okay.
I can give an example. I'm not going to name the game.
All right.
But I'll give you this is a real world example. So there was a puzzle game that we worked on, and we spent 3 months going through to development. Mm-hmm. And then it had meta in it. It had 500 levels. But we missed out something very critical, which was we focused on adding additional content, the levels and the meta. We did not do enough due diligence or work on the onboarding and the fatui. Mm-hmm. And what we saw is we went to market after spending probably about $250,000 in development of this to get this game to sort of MVP. And we went live and it had a 12% day one retention. And we were like, oh my God, what is going on? This is terrible. Like, we've just spent, $250,000 on this. Why? The game looks fantastic. All of the meta's there. We should see a really good retention. And then we did, we actually did a playtest before the end, and the playtest, but there's one thing about doing a playtest and there's nothing about listening to it and ensuring that the information is passed. And Jack can go into that, later, I guess, about some of the pitfalls that developers fall in terms of like doing playtests and are not actually actionable or actioning the information. But what we found at the end of the playtest was the fatui was way too difficult, and that we would have known that from week 4, and we could have corrected that and focused on the fatui before launching, and saved ourselves a couple of months in additional development that we didn't have to do, or we would have reprioritized, which in turn would have saved us 6 figures of some description.
Wow. Okay.
And that's not even the kind of most extreme example of that. Like, the first time user experience and changing things around there isn't as hard as the kind of compounding effects that you can have in like a more mid-core game or hardcore game that has more in-depth control schemes. So with the other end of those studios, with people who are making the more complex game mechanics, we'll see them testing controls an awful lot earlier, because if you mess that up at the start, you're goofed longer down the line, because you're changing core game design elements far too late in the process. I think another thing to maybe call out, John, on what you were talking about there was, let's say, like back in the hyper casual days, or the way that some people still see playtesting is actually more as a QA test. What they're looking for, what the developers or designers are looking for in there is, hey, like, is there a bug when someone opens this menu? As opposed to, is this person enjoying the experience that they're having? And I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions with games user research as a whole. Actually, this isn't a QA function. We're not here to just raise up random Jira tickets for people to work on over the course of 2 weeks. We're here to find out why people are playing your game the way they're playing it.
For a lot of our listeners, maybe that's not something that they've thought about. So can you maybe unpick some of the different types of testing, play testing, functional, and just really give us some insight into the different types of testing that you guys see studios who are succeeding doing?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the biggest differences that we'll see with successful studios and studios who are, I don't know, as Peggy said, running the race, is that successful studios will take one type of research question for each playtest, as opposed to trying to ask like 100 different things or come out with 100 different outcomes in one test. So a successful studio will come in and they'll say, hey, we're going to spend 30 minutes today figuring out the onboarding. That's all we want to know. If we find out something about monetization or level design or something, that's a lovely little bonus. But we want to have, in a report at the end of the day, we want to have 5 green things about the onboarding and 5 red things about the onboarding that we need to go and fix. And then they'll go into testing longer form stuff, like I mentioned. So they might go out to 2 hours at that point, see what the returning player experience is like, see how the game is managing the player's frustration in certain levels as well. And then the last methodology that people will tend to use then is that longitudinal type. So you're getting people to come in over multiple days to see exactly what they're doing. You'll survey them at the end of every day and rely pretty heavily on that survey data too. One of the final things to call out on that is the successful studios that are doing this don't necessarily have research teams. We've seen some of the kind of most in-depth and most innovative research that we've done actually has come from product teams and game design teams who are willing to just take on the mantle and figure out exactly why players are doing what they're doing. And I think one of the things that a friend of mine, John Hobson, called out in his book, The Secret Science of Games, is there is nothing more powerful than the game designer seeing someone go through the experience that the game designer has developed incorrectly. Like that's what's going to make real meaningful difference to the game you make.
Oh, listen, I have heard so many developers saying, yes, but you're not playing it properly.
Yeah,
that's not what I designed it to just, to do. And this is why, again, to go back, why programmers make terrible testers in some cases is because they're not good at acting like a stupid user. They know what they should be doing, not what somebody's going to do. So it's a great point, Jack, and I am absolutely going to track that book down because I want to know more about it. I would like to think that game development is a science. It's got to have gone past the sort of the witchcraft and woo that it was back in the 90s.
Oh, absolutely. And that's something we can probably do another episode on that. Like talking about how it's gone from, being like games have gone from being this incredibly creative process that was really set out by visionaries in the kind of computer science world to something that still has a lot of that flavor, but needs to have core kind of product research and development experience as well now. Again, like we spoke about earlier, you can't launch something mediocre or something that people can't use because it'll fall flat in its face. There's too many games out there. There's 1,000 games going up on Steam every day. There's probably 10x that going up on the stores. So yeah, you've got to have something a lot more than just a creative vision there.
Yeah, if we build it good enough, they will come.
Yeah,
it wasn't true in the 2010s. Sure as heck isn't true now.
Absolutely.
But one of the biggest surprises for me, although it makes sense in retrospect, is that successful studios, and I'm going to come to you, John, don't just test their own games. They test the competitors. They test the other games out there on the market that are in the same genre or the same, type of game. Can you talk to us about this? Because this, I'll admit, this was a new one on me.
Yeah, look, again, I think it's something that's quite standard in more successful studios is sort of reverse engineering the games, right? Like, example, Rollick bring Twisted Tangle to market, this rope mechanic that people have never seen before, and it does exceptionally well. takes off, right?
Yeah.
Then you saw, how do you know you've found success? Is when you've got 10 copycats in the store all doing the same thing after your, and there's an age old sort of thing in gaming innovation, or which is like you've got pure innovation, which is like something completely new. And then you've got a plus one innovation, which is taking something that already exists and then making an adjustment of innovation or adding something to it and then creating arguably a new experience, right? And I think a lot of the time, when you get true innovation, then you get this plus one innovation, spurs off the back of it. And a lot of studios get inspired, right, by these new things. And we as a company would, test games like this because, it's something that we've never seen before. And we were, intrigued by it and we wanted to understand it. Equally, in the last couple of years, because of the rise of meta in games after, hyper casual not having meta, understanding meta and the different sort of things like, do you want to have some sort of leaderboard or a treasure chest or one of these other, a world builder, a travel mechanic, like all of these different things that you have. Like some of this stuff is just, we as a company just never thought about. And obviously we're playing other people's games and we get inspiration of it, but we have no idea if it's just a biased opinion of we enjoy this, right? Or is it something that makes an impact? And so understanding your competitors' games in an unbiased fashion is extremely important for a multitude of reasons, a few of that I've just mentioned. But yeah, it's something that I think all medium to large studios are doing. And I think it's something that the small to medium studios probably don't think about. But yeah, having someone deconstruct, like doing deconstructions of competitor games, doing playtests of competitors' games. This is how you understand what's going on in the market and how you can take influence and incorporate some of that inspiration into your own games. So yes, it's a really, really important part of thing, which again, I don't know if everyone outside the big boys does.
Yeah.
And
I'd like to tag on to that. Yeah, I'd like to tag on to that one a little bit more. I think for a long time, people would have looked at big data platforms like Sensor Tower and said, okay, cool, these are the competitors that are doing well. Let's get 2 or 3 people in the studio to go and play that game over the course of a week to see what's happening. We've seen studios tag on players, like real players, to those experiences to understand a lot more about not how does this mechanic work, but what resonates well within it. One of the games that we unfortunately don't work with, but I want to call out because I've been playing a lot, is Archer 2. And I posted a couple of days ago, is there anything Archer 2 can't do? They've had 3 different live events over the past, it's probably around a month now. The first one was when they implemented Monopoly Go into their game as a live event.
Yeah,
then they put in a fishing event. The dice roller and stuff.
I remember it. It
was amazing. Then they put in a fishing game, which was very similar to what 10 Square Games used to make with Fishing Clash. And then right now they've got a kind of digging mini game, which has been basically, most of it's been ripped from Royal Match there, I think. And this kind of like +1 innovation or finding out other ways to keep your players engaged and keep them in your game is keeping me in there. For sure. And it's bringing people back for different reasons as opposed to just the core loop, having these kind of different experiences to play. And yeah, it's been really fascinating seeing other studios testing that type of thing, whether it is those sort of mini games and figuring out what mini games are going to work well in the market, or if it's more around the core loop of a newer game. Like it's in the report last year, the game that was tested the most, the competitor game that was tested the most was Monopoly Go. People were looking at this thing and be like, how does this work? What's resonating with players? And you can see that it works on Sensor Tower. You can go, you see the reports, $1 billion in 2 weeks or something insane like that. But understanding the why about why people are sticking into
Jack. 3 months, but you're close, right?
But understanding the why about why people keep coming back to that is super important.
I mean, what's coming through here is that you're turning testing into competitive advantage. It's intel. But that requires a strategy and approach to understanding how to actually test competitor games. Is there anything that you're doing over there as well, Jack, where someone can come in, say, a studio and say, yeah, I want to test against competitors, but I just don't want to do like sort of look at a list at what's crushing it in Sensor Tower. I really want to understand and analyze what's working. I mean, can you say, yeah, then test your game against this or something? Because it is a strategy. You can't do this sort of without deep knowledge of the competitor landscape in the first place. So do you do some sort of consulting there and say, hey, we think you should do this or look at that mechanic?
Yeah. So most of the studios that are approaching us about that have a very good idea of their own landscape. I say this a lot. Mobile games come from business plans. And when you look at a business plan for a mobile game, you're going to see, hey, this is the market. These are the target audiences that we're looking at for this. And here's some games in that landscape that we want to be taking players away from, right? Are there any new players out there anymore? Who knows? So they would look at maybe, let's say, a game like Monopoly Go and say, hey, we want to steal players from Scopely. That is our core goal. So we need to understand why are they playing that game the way that they are, what's keeping them hooked in, and then how can I take them away? What are their motivations to continue playing, and what would make them switch? On PlaytestCloud, you're able to talk to people who play Monopoly Go, whether it's people who have downloaded the game and played it twice, or people who are really highly engaged within it. So being able to talk to those players, whether it's through a playtest, through a non-moderated test with a couple of survey questions at the tail end of it, or interviewing them, or doing what we call a moderated playtest, where you'll actually watch the person play in real time while you're on the phone to them. And then you can extract so much information from them there in like 2 days. This doesn't take weeks. I think that's something really important to call out here. If you want to get just a finger on the pulse of this, you can get this span up in like less than 24 to 48 hours. Like results will start coming in for single session playtests after 20 hours, I think is the kind of the average at the moment.
I think it's such a good distinction as well from what you said, Jack, about like the fact that you have access to different types of players. Like you have access to players that have maybe never played the game and have to download it the first time. You have access to people that have played the game for years. You have people that are gamers. You have people that are not gamers. You have male, you have female, you have all of the different age demographics. Like, because you're not just going to test with, 20-year-olds versus 50-year-olds, because, maybe your core demographic is 35 to 55 women, right? And if you've not got, and I feel like, having that variety is something that you can't get in a studio.
Yeah.
Like I can't get that, right? I have to use an external partner, and PlaytestCloud bring that variety of user to me and ensure that the right users are testing the right games, and it's just even more impactful, right? Like the information I get.
One other thing that I want to get to is, because we're talking about gameplay, testing gameplay, but Brian, as we both know, it's all going beyond games. It's games are everywhere. They're in everything. So you can also be testing monetization models, ad experience as part of the gaming experience. When games and brands get closer together, this can get very, very interesting. So I'm wondering, Jack, what can studios do or learn from testing and what you're doing in gameplay testing to improve these experiences? Do you see that coming?
Oh, absolutely. We see a lot of studios, a lot of the bigger studios that have like big market insights teams. They'll be testing ads very frequently through us, either through like our concept testing tool, or they'll actually be seeing how it works in the game as well. When it comes to testing maybe monetization experiences, we could be looking at stuff like testing battle passes. So that's a very familiar one for us. Like, how do people interface with this? Like, can they use it? I think a lot of this comes down to, can they use the thing? It's like kind of a core product research mentality that we have to have in there. But we see people test across the whole gambit of different things there.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, if the unit economics of the game don't work, then the game doesn't succeed, and you've just spent a year building something and $1 million, $10 million, on something that just doesn't work. So I do feel like, as part of the testing process, it's not just the fortuity or looking at the meta or again the feature set. it's understanding the buying behavior of the users, because it will influence the percentage of paying users as a key metric, right? For like casual games, how many people out of 100 are going to go to an IAP within what time frame versus XYZ. And if you can do some playtesting and get some input on how maybe to engage with players earlier, that's a massive win, right? It's the same as positive cash flow. The earlier you get the money in, the better. So yeah, it's really important, and it may be something that people don't actually think about when they're doing playtesting, Peggy, if I'm honest, right? Because again, say you're working in a hybrid casual studio where 50% of your revenue is from ads and 75% of that is from interstitial, then the nature of a monetization manager will be, okay, let's increase the frequency. We'll monitor the retention to make sure that we're not blasting people and then loads of people churn. But in actual fact, if you do a playtest and 10 people say to you, like, this is the most aggressive ad frequency I've ever seen, like, you need to tone it down. If you're doing that in an early playtest versus when you've got 100,000 down, right, that can make or save you lots and lots of money. So it's really important to factor that into as part of your playbook when you are doing correct playtesting.
This is just speaking to me. It's saying it's taking out the guesswork of every part of your game. We're not putting a finger in the wind and going, how is this game going to make money? If we increase the frequency of ads, will we turn people off? If we change ad providers, ad markets, are we going to start seeing things? We had a guest on a few shows ago who was talking about quality of ads. And everything that you guys are saying about the move away from QA, which is seen as a final step before release, into a more iterative, can we say testing culture? I think it makes so much sense in the highly competitive markets today. And just to touch on that side of things, Jack, so we've been talking mobile, but the report also mentions a move into PC and the sort of I used to say the mainstream market, but mobile's mainstream now. So PC is very niche.
Yeah, I don't know if people will agree with you on the niche end of PC, but we moved into the PC market in November of last year after about a year of product development and research ourselves. So we were really practicing what we preached with that. I think the big interest here maybe would be testing cross-platform games. A lot of mobile studios are seeing that as the next key revenue driver for them, whether that's through the web or through Steam as well. The other thing that we've started to see people test is web stores. So we'll see people test their web store on PC to skirt around the Apple and Google Play policies and understand, is that experience usable? What do players think of that? Because if you can move like 2% of your paying users over to a web store, you're going to be in a much better position financially at the end of it.
That is very intriguing, because now we're seeing that there's going to be room for much broader testing strategies, because we talk about web stores, and we'll have some guests additionally, Brian, who are really moving out in this direction and what they're seeing. I mean, that is new territory that has a lot of testing. I mean, it's like, this is it. I'm naked. This is my web store. This is me. Does this resonate? There's nowhere to hide, basically.
Yeah, exactly so.
Can't blame it on onboarding. You put yourself out there. This is the way you are. And exactly on that point, John, I'm wondering from your perspective, where you see playtesting heading in the next years, because we're talking about cross-platform, PC, web stores. I mean, so like there's an app for that. There's a test for that.
Yeah, no, seriously. Like I said, if there's probably half a dozen plus reasons why you should playtest now, there's going to be a dozen in the next coming 6 to 12 months.
Wow.
I think what Jack said are the big ones. Like cross-platform is becoming much more common, and anyone who's played Genshin Impact, you go from your phone to your PS5. I did that for a long time, so I think when I was at Kwalee, it was one of our long-term goals was to find a game that was a cross-platform success, and we had success on PC, we had success on mobile. We had some games that converted in a porting way to Switch and did really well, but we've never found up to the point where we would have a cross-platform success. But cross-platform is going to be the future of gaming, right? In the next couple of years, this is where all of the big boys are going to go. So giving accessibility to play it in multiple ways and forms and on the go versus stationary is just so important, right? And it's something that only few developers have actually cracked to date, but it's going to be where the future is. Wow. And then the web store stuff, completely agree, Jack. Like, let's be frank, and I'll call Apple out and Google. The duopoly is coming down, the walls are coming down, the DMA's coming for people, fines are happening, and you're not getting the value. 30%. There's no way that we should be paying 30% just to have our games on the Apple Store now without promotion, everything that we used to get. And if you're not King or Dream Games that bring in billions a year, you're not going to get that premium inventory and that featuring at the top. And web stores, are going to be leading the way to solve the biggest problem in gaming today, which is the unit economics no longer work. Profitability in studios is at an all-time low. We're seeing closures and layoffs because we cannot make it work with how it is currently. And that 30%, that could be the difference between saving people and closing studios. So you best believe if you're not doing the web store sort of strategy or looking into it as someone who does have a strong IAP breakdown, then you're just going to get left behind or you're leaving money on the table. So it's those two things in particular, the things I'm very passionate about at the moment.
I can hear it.
Oh, testify.
I agree, John. I can hear it. I just like from each of you a short soundbite in a nutshell. We know playtesting is what winners do. Now we know what they do differently. Now, those getting started with this strategy, they're getting excited about it. What's a number one action item for them? I'll start with you, Jack.
All right. So the number one action item for me would be to remember that successful studios are always innovating, whether that's innovating in terms of game design or in the different types of testing methodologies that they do. The most successful studios always want more from themselves and from their players. And I think this report highlights a couple of different ways that you're going to be able to do that.
I like the way that goes back into our love of endurance sports here. John, what about you? Your number one action item.
Look, guys, it's a no-brainer. Increase your frequency of testing and also the accessibility to PlaytestCloud into a variety of different positions within the company. Make sure your product managers are using it. Make sure your designers are using it. Make sure your QA and your insights people are using it. There's no reason why it needs to be just pigeonholed as some secret amongst one segment of people. There's value for everyone here. And like I said, there's 6 to 10 different types of tests that you can do. Each one will have different values to different people. So educate yourself on the playbook, right, and the types of testing. Make sure you've got more accessibility in the studios with an array of different people. And then just increase the frequency of the tests. Because the more you test, the more results you'll get and the better decisions you'll make. And ultimately, the more money you'll save by making the right ones.
Can't beat that. Yeah. Absolutely.
Test more, test often.
Yes. There you go.
It.
The new mantra.
That's already our mantra.
I should hope so too.
Yeah.
So, as Peggy said, we're going to wrap this up, but I have genuinely found it fascinating. So before we go, Jack, where can people find the report?
So people can find the report on the PlaytestCloud website. There will be a link posted there.
Okay, and we'll share that here, and we'll share it in the show notes as well.
We absolutely will. And before we go, we ask every guest a couple of questions that brings it right back into the heart of things, which is video games. So, Jack, John, I know we've had your answer before, so I'm going to come to you second. But Jack, what is it that you're playing right now when you should be testing? What do you play for fun rather than work?
Okay.
And what's your favorite game of all time?
All right. So for fun, right now I'm playing Archer 2 a lot. Like I mentioned a little bit earlier, I don't know if there's anything it can't do. I was a big fan of the first iteration of it from Hobby, and seeing Archer grow into this kind of crazy, insane metagame thing was fascinating. Churned out of it for a couple of years, and now with Archer 2, I'm just really enjoying all of the different ways it lets me play a game. My favorite game of all time. Got the Pokemon Cup here. It's got to be any one of the 3 second generation Game Boy games, which is Gold, Silver, and Crystal. When they added in that nighttime mechanic, it blew my, whatever I was, 10 years old. It blew my mind. I couldn't believe that they could make a game that seemed so similar to the previous iterations, but had this entire different thing with the new catching mechanic of Pokemon at night. And I really, really loved that.
By the way, I completely disagree with that. Pokemon Yellow of the first generation following the anime story is the best Pokemon. And I will just rubbish everything Jack just said. He doesn't know what he's talking about. He's not a true fan. Pokemon Yellow is the best one ever.
We don't have to agree on everything, John.
Okay,
We agree on playtesting. That's what matters. We agree on playtesting.
so this is getting into the competitive testing.
Yeah.
Okay, there are no wrong answers here,
Yes.
John. There really aren't. Jack, thank you. And John, how about yourself? Your opinions about Pokemon notwithstanding.
So
favourite?
the game I'm playing most at the moment is Pokemon TCGP, which I've completely hooked on. I've completed. I've got 100% sort of the collectibles of all of the different sets. I've probably spent like 300 quid on collecting all of the cards because, like Jack, I come from a generation of being obsessed with it when it came to the Western world. Being 12, 13 and getting Pokemon cards for the first time was like a mind-blowing experience. And my favourite game of all time is Final Fantasy VI. Yeah, you can't beat GTA London as well. Best one ever. Okay.
That was my baby. That was
it really?
That's it. Yeah. That's another podcast. But gentlemen, thank you so much. It's been an absolute joy. It's been a pleasure. We said this to you before, John, and we made good on that promise. But Jack, it would be lovely to have you back again. So it's one of these topics that I don't see getting any less important in the coming years.
I told you we're at the cusp of this, Brian. This is going to be massive, and it's great to understand what the winners are doing because then you can aim for that. And hey, I have to end on a pun. We had a winning team of guests to tell us about that. So thanks again, and guys, our paths will be crossing. This show is all about how to do your job better, how to make an amazing game, how to market it, and you have a say. So if you have a story or know someone we need to shine a light on, then we would love to hear from you.
We want to hear from you. We want to reflect the reality of the mobile games market in all its wonderful complexity and strangeness. So if you have any suggestions for us, if you have any feedback for us, you can always get in touch. You can email us at podcast@pocketgamer.biz. You can find us on Twitter @PGBiz, and you can reach out to us through the pocketgamer.biz website. If you're interested in listening to all of our podcasts, you can find them at pocketgamer.biz/podcast, and we would love to hear your thoughts on future shows.
And we've got you covered on all the major platforms, so subscribe to the audio podcast, as Brian said. Look for us on YouTube. If you want to read it, hey, you can do that too, because we have a companion post for you as well on the pocketgamer.biz website.
Tune in again for the next edition of the pocketgamer.biz podcast, and we look forward to speaking to you in the near future. Until then, I'm Brian Baglow.
I'm Peggy Salz, and that's a wrap until next week.